I'm interested in the ideas of all the panellists on the effects of your filmmaking practice. I mean, do you see the films that you've made, you've been involved in some ways kind of like changing communities or changing this country for the better, having an effect on people?
Yeah, yeah. You see, in all of this, there's medicine. You know, there's medicine in culture. There's medicine in the songs, and making films, and keeping our people dancing and being rewarded and understanding. Nice to show the modern thing, and it, you know, we take it back into the bush mob. The bush mob like to learn and see other people, and they're all kind of geared up with all these electronics, you know, in the bush.
Yeah.
The kids can ring me up and look at us right now, sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So these stories are really like an encouragement to education, braving the spirits. It's good to brave the spirits, yeah, to walk on into the marsh, and these two, they if or any other women out there doing their stories, you know, we run film festivals in the communities as well. So we get all these. Am I talking right here?
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe Beck, do you want to pick that one up? I mean, have you seen the effects of something like First Australians, or
oh yeah, absolutely,
like on Australia?
Yep, I think so. Not just from First Australians, but from the whole movement of, you know, all our work really. That audiences have a hunger for it, you know, and it's just it's like there's a shift in the consciousness of the country, that people are just really open to it and generous, and perhaps we just have, you know, perhaps it's just taken all this time to get to this place. But with First Australians, the beauty of First Australians by a long shot is the fact that kids are watching it in the schools, and they're learning from it, and they're seeing themselves and their ancestors and their family members, and they're hearing about the injustice, and they're also hearing about the friendships and the difficulties and the complications and the really tricky complexities and dynamics of that time. But not just way back then, leading up to something remarkable like Mabo, you know. So definitely it's just knowing that it's being taught in schools, because I didn't have that. And look, I'm only 35 years of age, and I never, ever saw anything about Aboriginal people throughout my whole education. So that's the best thing ever, the best gift, I think.
I'd say it's not just for our communities. I mean, I teach here at UniSA, and I teach a course that's Indigenous art, culture and design, and it's for a mix of students across first to third year, across a number of programs. It's compulsory, so I do have some students resistant to it. It's like, why do I have to do this course? It doesn't have anything to do with me wanting to be an interior designer or an architect. Okay. So I push it outside of that, and I say, okay, why don't you do me a comparison between films? And I'll pick someone like, say, a film by Rolf, and I pick Samson and Delilah. And for many of these young students, and particularly, it seems to me, for middle-class young white boys, they grab that film. You know, they have written me reflective papers that are so open and honest, because it's one of the first things that they've seen that they can actually relate to and go, I get it. I get it. I didn't understand. I thought, oh, I'm going to watch this film and it's going to be blah, blah, blah. And they're really honest back with me. And I watched when Warwick was here last week, and we just took him for a beer up the road at World's End, and there was all these little students there, and I could hear him going, Warwick Thornton, as he came in. And I said, oh, come on over and say hello. And they were just so stoked to meet him. And I could see that it meant a lot to him as well, you know. They were just like really excited that they got a chance to tell him how much they loved his film. So it is a two-way thing, and it should be a two-way thing. And I think that's what's really, really important about all of these kinds of films, is if they provide that avenue in for somebody, anyone.
Working on that thing, you know, on that First Australia, I learned about Bennelong. I did all that Bennelong stuff. Amazing stuff. Like he was a friend with Captain Arthur Phillip, and all that stuff. And so the history was right in front of me. And, you know, it was very nice. Inside me, I can understand Bennelong more. Yeah. It's those things that they enrich us with.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Rolf, there are some, I think, kind of immediate effects we might talk about with 10 Canoes. I mean, what kind of effects has it had on a long-term basis with the community that you work with?
Look, yeah, the community is changed a little. You can't change it a lot, but you change it a little for the better, I think. We try to manage it very well because these things can go wrong pretty easily. But in some small way, the community of Ramingining has found a bit more confidence with itself. That's sort of a broad way of saying it. It's some individuals, it's, you know, what is a community? Yeah, it's generally, they can think more ambitiously than they could before. That's somehow an expression of confidence that I think is a good thing. So, you know, we can think that the crocodile farm that we've been talking about for 20 years, we can now think it might be real and we can make it happen. You know, whether it does or doesn't, it's another question. But you know, these, you know, I think about First Australians, for example, and that if I'd had that when I was a child, I could never have thought to make the tracker. I could never have thought to, you know, and so things are changing rapidly and radically. But we are all just a small part of a much larger movement of change. And it's great to be a small part of it. And, you know, in some small way cinematically, Jeddah might have kicked it off in some respects, but in other respects it's really Jimmie Blacksmith kicked it off. But then you find 10 theoreticians who would say that Jimmie Blacksmith held it back for 20 years because the prevailing wisdom amongst distributors was that films with Indigenous content simply did not work. Look at Jimmie Blacksmith. Wonderful film, didn't make any money. Yeah, you know,
I got started for it.
my sense of it is that it was important because it was radical and it shifted the ground on which you could make films that had Indigenous content. And it took a while for that to actually get through, but it got through. And you know, it's so different now than when Fred made that film. And so that in that sense, it's the most astonishing piece of filmmaking because it is extremely radical.
But there were other films made before Blacksmith too, like Mad Dog Morgan, Storm Boys. And there are a lot of reasons to explore it. And we were on the panels of whatever it is, the trend. And now it is. So, you know, I'm glad I did it.